Hi, my name is Johart Aguiniga, and I am the only member of my team for this project for Code Labs. For personal reasons, my other team member had to drop out at the beginning of this project. So I did this project all on my own pretty much. Of course, I had my mentor for advice and direction, and he was a great mentor and a great source of advice when I needed him. So I was really lucky to have him. So my project for this summer and for Code Labs was creating a tic-tac-toe game using React. So my solution to that was I used Create React App to get a general basic structure of an app. So I could use that to just to go off of and make this game. For the most part, I just deleted all the components from Create React App, and I only just kept a couple just to utilize for this game. But for the most part, all the rest of the components and CSS files for the styling are just stuff that was made from scratch to make this game. So the first component that I have is this class app, and this is just like I said, it's a remnant from Create React App, and at the very top of it, I have all the various imports that I would need to make this game. This kind of just imports everything that I need to put this game together, and that's like the actual game component and then a home screen component, and then together it just makes it all come together. Um, so, at the very top, I have import React from React. I'm importing the CSS file for the styling. I'm importing a route and a switch, and I'm importing the game component and the home component. And like I said, this is a class, so it has lifecycle methods available to it. Right here, I have a switch, and this renders the first route that matches the path and also allows for nested routers. Inside the switch, I created routes with exact paths for the home menu and the game component. I used exact paths because this would eliminate possible issues with the that could arise from not making it exact. And I also made a route render, and it renders a UI when the path matches a current URL. And this is for an error page, just in case the player, the user, just enters something weird, they're redirected to this page where it says error. And then at the very bottom, I'm exporting this, this component in case it needs to be imported by another component. My next component is index.js. And this is another remnant of Create React App. Usually I wouldn't be showcasing this because it's not something I actually coded, but I did have to make the browser router here to wrap all the route components. So that's the reason I'm showing it right here. And I had to import the browser router at the very top, but for the most part, all the other coding is just, like I said, comes from the basic structure, create React app. So this is just like a remnant of that. And the next few components are going to be stuff I actually made from scratch and is the actual components that are making this game. So the first component that I have is home.js. And at the very top, I'm importing, just React component from React and a CSS file for the styling. This is a class, not a function, so it has like lifecycle hooks and methods available to it. I have a constructor that is used for initializing the local state of the component by assigning an object to this dot state. I also have this right here that's used for binding event handler methods that occur in the component. I have an on-click event handler that pushes the user to the game when the button is clicked. At the very bottom, I have a render, and this creates a virtual DOM. So it returns a header and a button that pushes the user to the game. So I just have like a header that says homepage. There's a class name assigned to this for the styling, and I also have a class name assigned to the button for the styling. And then once the user presses this button, the handle click event is initialized, and the user is pushed to the URL where the game is at. And then at the very bottom, I'm exporting this component in order for it to be utilized by other components to make this game work. My next component is going to be square.js, and this is not a class. This is a function. Because it's a function, I don't really need to import React from React. However, since I'm using props as a parameter in this function, I need to import React from React. I also still do need to export this component in order for it to be utilized by other components to make this game work. Like I said, this is a function and it's using props as a parameter to send values to the child components. It's a very simple component. I just have a button that initializes the value of props and just the class name for an identifier for the CSS file for the styling. And of course, at the very bottom, like I said earlier, I just am exporting it to be used by other components. My next component is Calculatewinner.js, and this is also a function, but I'm not using props, so I don't need to import React from React to make this work. However, I still do need to export it for it to be utilized by the other components. So this is a function and it's using squares as a parameter. And like I said, not a React component, it is just a function. In order to determine the winner of the game, I made a 2D array named lines, and a 2D array is an array of arrays. And inside I have all the possible winning combinations of a tic-tac-toe game saved into it. So down here, in order to determine if the player has won, I use a for loop that cycles through the 2D array lines and then assigns the values of index I to the variables A, B, and C. I also made an if statement that determines if the A, B, and C positions match each other, it returns the winning symbol. And if it doesn't, it'll return null instead. And then at the very bottom, like I said, I'm just exporting the component for it to be used by the other components. My next one is going to be my beefier component, and it's board.js. This is a class. At the very top, I'm importing React component from React. I'm importing the square component that I showed earlier, and I am importing the Calculatewinner component that I just showed right before this. And I am importing a .css file for the styling. This is a class, so it has lifecycle hooks available to it. I have a constructor that, of course, it's initializing this local state of the component by assigning an object to this.state and also the binding event handler methods that occur in the component. I'm creating a null array right here and also a Boolean that checks if the next player value is either an X or an O. I have a handle click event that creates a copy of the state of squares that can be used to check the game. I have an if statement that checks to see if the game ended or if the square is empty. The value of the square is filled with an appropriate next turn value right here. And then I have a render right down here. And this renders the square with the appropriate value. And on click, that passes a value to the square component. Then I use this to use the calculate winner function, passing through the current board to determine if there is a winner. And if there is, there's a status change on the top of the screen that shows who won the game. And then down here in my return statement, I have the class names for the various sections for the styling. Each one of these is a row, and each row has 3 squares. And it passes through an index of the square of each of the row to render the square. And then down at the very bottom, I'm just exporting a board to be utilized by the game component to just wrap this all together and make this game just come together. So my final component is this game.js. And then right here, I am just importing board, and board is using all the other components. So this is just kind of coming together at the very end. I have a CSS file for the styling and just, import React component from React. This is also a class. Like I said, lifecycle hook options available to it. Of course, I have a constructor, and also, I'm binding the event handler methods that occur in a component like handle back and handle click. On this on click event handler for pushing the user to the home page, and I also have an alert that will tell the user that they're headed to the home page if they press this button. And I have a props dot history that's just pushing the user to this URL. I have an event handler that uses a route component that will keep a record of the user's history to redirect them back to the previous page. And down at the render right here is just, of course, like a render that creates a virtual DOM and returns a React element. I have the class names for the styling, and they're just identifiers, like I said, for the CSS files. I have this button that once clicked initializes the function and the event handle click. And down here, I have this class name that defines the class name for the home button. And then right here, I am calling the board component that is importing the square and Calculatewinner components. And it kind of like brings this whole thing together and just makes this game work. And then down here, I'm exporting this this component to be used by app.js to just make this whole game work together. And I learned a lot creating this game. I learned how to use routes, how to make exact paths, how to use props in this dot state, and just kind of how the basic structure of kind of how a React project can be. There's different ways you can do stuff, but it was this was fun and a great learning experience for me to be able to do this. And like I said, I really enjoyed having a mentor, and it was, even though it was a little bit more difficult doing this all on my own, I managed to do it. So I was really happy with myself. And like I said, I learned a lot in this. If someone wants to reach me, it's just, Johart Aguiniga 1221 at gmail.com. I do have this on my GitHub, which is J Aguiniga as my username on there. And, I really enjoyed working with Code Labs, and I hope to keep working with them in the future.